had someone tell me I fell off. Ooh, I needed that. And they wanna see me pick back up. Well, where'd I leave it at?
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Bushwhacking History with Berserker Bear. Sorry it's been a while, but as you can see, we're going to be doing dragons today. So, welcome back. Please make sure you hit like, share, subscribe. And what we're going to do, this is a quick intro. I'm going to show you all the components of what's going to progress through the actual episode itself. But you're already learning something as how it is when you come to bushwhacking history. So, real quick, we're going to go over a couple components that I have, and I want to show you. It's going to be the arc of dragons throughout history, how they relate to humans, how they're important to us historically, also mythologically. And we're going to go over some dragons from myth and the associated heroes with them, also pop culture dragons, because they're kind of intermixed, but they aren't distinguished. So, we're going to go over that and a general overview of how they play through our psyche. Is it a memory that we have from when things were bigger, possibly antediluvian days, or is it a Jungian archetype or a primordial fear or a phytophobia that we all share of a fear of snakes or serpents? So we're going to look into that. Let's get right into the quick intro. So what we're going to see today is, well, the underlying theme is my man right here, one of my favorite authors all time, and that's his my favorite quote from him, J.R.R. Tolkien. Matter of fact, you want to talk about pop culture dragons? Smaug is probably my first introduction to a pop culture dragon, reading The Hobbit that my father gave to me, and we're going to bring it home from a gift that my dad gave to me that's quite relevant for right now. So, not all who wander are lost. That's kind of the theme because we're going to go off the map a little bit, and there's that's very significant for the story that I'm going to try to tell here, or at least detail. So, not all who wander are lost. What's the essence of that? It means that it's okay to go off path a little bit and look at things from a different angle, in my opinion. As long as you have a solid foundation of, you know, either whether it's your wife or your faith or your family, rooted to the ground so you can come back. You know, we all like to fly away in the air like kites sometimes as researchers who like to dive deep, but there's nothing wrong with that. We always got to do our chores first before we slay dragons, right? So with that, dragon Tolkien does have a dragon quote that I wasn't familiar with before I started doing this research. So let's read this right now. This will help to give context and how he thought about things. I desire dragons with a profound desire, of course. In my timid body, I did not wish to have them in my neighborhood, but the world that contained even, pardon me, I desired dragons with a profound desire, of course. I, in my timid body, did not wish to have them in my neighborhood. But the world that contained even the imagination of Fafnir was richer and more beautiful at whatever the cost of peril. J.R.R. Tolkien. So we'll learn who Fafnir was. He's a mythological dragon, right? As opposed to, like I said, a pop culture dragon. Although there have been mythological dragons that have become pop culture ones, but I digress and we'll get into that. Also, thanks, Dad. For this. Gave me this a couple weeks ago. T-shirt, got a bear on it, and it says "Not all who wander are lost." Thought that was very cool. And again, thanks a lot, Dad. He initially gave me The Hobbit to read way back in the day in sixth grade. I read it in like 5 or 6 days. Amazing. So with that, the essence: not all who wander are lost. Keep that in mind because we're going to drag in this dude. All right. How does the Ultimate Warrior play into this? I'll explain right now. So my favorite wrestler from back in the day. So is my older brother's favorite wrestler from back in the day. Now, if you take a look, that's him right there. Rest in peace, James Brian Helwig. And he's got the best build to in the business. Parts unknown. Now, we're going to cycle that into how it relates to Terra Incognita, because you see these on old maps. places that weren't charted were called parts unknown, or terra incognita, or here be dragons. So let's pull that in to that's going to be addressed in the show. So that's how that legend factors into this one. Ultimate Warrior, hailing from parts unknown. The the best build to in the business, or build from rather. Okay, also we're going to hear a reading that's going to give context from this book right here, actually, a book that my wife found, and we're going to explain how and where she found it. The Dragon Path. Okay, why it's significant. I met the author, Mason Winfield. I have another meeting set up with him sometime in August. This is extremely significant because it has to do with geomancy and shapes in the landscape. And as you can see on the cover right there, there's a dragon, and I believe that will be Yalda Boath. Shout out to one of my commenters who nailed that right from the jump. And again, I'm sorry I was balking for so long with this episode. It is what it is, though. You'll appreciate it. Now, looking at this from a different angle of history, again, we're going to go over the myth and the history of it, but I'm also going to posit and hypothesize a notion when you look at these dragons through the Orient or the Asian lens, they have a much different and appeal, if you will, as far as contrasting it to the Western dragon of fire. The Orient respects and reveres them, and you see mountain dragons. I'm also going to try to weave a thread for examples of mountain dragons. And I found this article fairly recently. Another reason why I keep on making it longer, I keep accumulating information. Now, pay attention to the bottom right, and we're going to make this quick because I'm going to make an argument that, like I said earlier, in the antediluvian age, things were way different. And I found this before. And that article that I just put on screen might lend credence to my hypothesis here. Because what is really going on here? Keep in mind, bottom right. And we're going to hip fire, find that place and go to it. And I'm going to, like I said, weave a thread through the mythology and history of dragons. And were they actually being conjured up from the earth itself? Can the earth itself act as a biotic agent to actually spawn life? We know that it does with trees and everything, but that's not talking about creation of humans. This is something that's different, and we're going to get into it. So again, welcome back to another episode of Bushwhacking History with Berserker Bear. This is an episode that you get when you take a mirror of righteousness and put it up to the eye of Sauron and see what happens. Also, I'd like to say that, with my research, I like to throw the proverbial rock into the other's camp to assess the movements of the centuries, and engage what's going on. I kind of did that here with dragons in the research sense, but turns out the rock was a boomerang because it came right back home. So you're going to hear my wife explain how she found this book, and then we're going to get into the reading of it. It's going to give some historical context, and you're watching another episode of Bushwhacking History with Berserker Bear. Welcome back. Let's go tackle dragons and keep it sleuthing. Hey, what's up, everybody? As you heard, I'm going to lead in and finally do it. This is my beautiful wife, Berserker Bear. This is Rachel. And for all the videos that you've seen of me, she puts up with me on the back end of it, doing my research and all that stuff. So I promised a long time ago, if you guys, a lot of you who've been with me for a while might remember, I've had this book for a while. Well, the entire time of doing my videos, and I pull from it. Sorry, babe, covering your face.
That's all good.
So I promised for a little bit that I would actually have my wife explain how she came about finding this book, because it's very special as far as what's here in Buffalo and what I do. I pull a lot from it. I've done Gutenberg, Niagara Square, but my wife found this at the job that we're at now, that we met at about how long ago, babe?
15 years I started there, and that's where we met. So
That's where we met, yeah. But there's before we met. Well, why don't you explain it? Actually, I don't think I've ever heard the story about. I guess it's not that much of a story. I mean, you sat down at a desk and found this in the back of the cabinet. But why don't you explain it and how much I annoy you with my research, but how much this means to us because it's from where we met and we're still there.
Yeah. So I started again 15 years ago at my job. I was being trained for 3 months, I think it was at least, and I ended up getting put at a desk randomly, and I was cleaning it out, just making sure there was nothing in there. And towards the back of the desk, I found this book, and I thought, oh, well, that's kind of interesting. I've always been into.
It's signed too. I mean, that's one thing that's cool too. It's a signed book by Mason Winfield is the author. Sorry, man. She wants to kill me already.
um, where was I? Sorry.
You were cleaning out your desk and you found it in a like so.
Yeah. So I found it in the back of the drawer, and I thought it was pretty interesting. I've never been a really big book reader, to believe it or not. I married someone that has all books, and I really don't read much. But I did find this book, and I found it pretty interesting. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to keep it. And I kept it for many, many years, and we did nothing with it.
Yeah,
really.
Like sat in her room for a
Yeah.
little bit. Yeah, and there was a place that we wanted to go to that you went to as a kid.
Yeah.
Called Gudelberg. I did that in my Halloween episode, right?
Which I thought was funny because it was actually in the book.
It's in the book. I was just perusing in there before. This is at her mom's house, right?
Yes.
And I'm like, I was just perusing in there. I'm like, did you say you went to this place Gudelberg? And it happened to be in the book. I'm like, you know what's in this book? Yeah, I knew it said Shadows of the Western Door, but I was, like I said, flipping around, and she's like, what, really? And then that's when I kind of got my interest piqued. And so we went there way back in the day, but I've had this one ever since. And it's significant now because I'm doing the research that I am, and I kind of flipping through it like I did 15 years ago, and found the Gudelberg. Now I'm finding stuff that's relevant for what I'm doing with the boots on the ground here in Buffalo. So I thought that'd be a pretty special story. What else do you have to add, babe, aside from the fact that we've been together for that long? And with the essence of the actual video that we're doing, that I started off with and showed you, not all who wander are lost. And I could wander a little bit, like I initially said, with my research, getting out there and flying around like a kite. But my wife is my rock, and she's who I rely on, not only to support me with what I do, but to reel me back in. You know, when you got to do those chores or you got to finish up some work around the house, you can't always be slaying dragons, and you got to do some work first. So I rely on her. I love her very much, and I thought it'd be very special for me to first introduce my wife to you guys, initially Mrs. Berserker Bear, Rachel.
Hi.
But to explain the very cool story about how I found this book. So it's been a minute since I've seen you guys, so I hope that was cool, and break the ice back into sleuthing again, which I've been sleuthing, but as far as episodes go, here's my wife. And any final words, babe, or give anybody some insight as far as how is it dealing with Berserker Bear?
Well, just like all marriages, you know, we have our ups and downs, our challenges, but you know, he's doing his best with his research, and he enjoys doing it, and I fully support him with regards to that. Yep. Of course, he always says family comes first. So unfortunately, I have to pull him away from the research to do many things that we have planned.
Which isn't a bad thing. It's a good thing, right?
With the family. However, you know, I am very happy for him. I'm glad he can do this. I am really not a video person. So this is really a one-off for me.
I think we do it one take.
Good job, yeah. So, you know, just as he said, you know, he's going to do this episode. I hope everyone enjoys it. It's been a long time coming for this anticipation. Believe me, you already know, but I definitely know.
How dare you?
And everyone enjoy.
Thank you. From Berserker Bear, Mrs. Berserker Bear, Rachel. Let's keep it sleuthing. All right. Take care, y'all.
Bye.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Hope you like that. So welcome back to Bigger Me, right? But yeah, that was my wife. And she just detailed how she found it. When I said how I found it, how I came upon finding it, right? She found it. But as I'd like to bust her chops a little bit, I say it's mine now, but it really is hers. She did find it. So I hope you like that. And I hope you like me introducing you to Mrs. Berserker Bear. There you go. So what you're going to hear now is a reading from the book. The just about a 5 minute reading. There'll be some. I'll put a montage up for you, some cool dragon pictures. And what Mason does is a good job of explaining the archetype and the fight between the hero, the historical hero, and the serpent and the dragon. And it does relate back to the Western Door, the dragon path, because Iroquois legend, mythos, is a thunder god Hino, and he does battle with the horned serpent of Niagara River, which is about 2 football fields away from me. So we're tracking it back home. I got much more work to do as far as Vikings and the Viking ships that came possibly through here in dragon ships. That's coming up again down the road, or down the path, or down the canal, if you will. So yeah, this is a reading from Shadows, the first chapter, or no, sorry, the chapter of the dragon path, and the first excerpt from that chapter, the dragon fight. Here it is. Hope you like it, and stay tuned till afterwards, because the gentleman that's cited in here, Franklin LaVoie, I found a lecture from him, and it's extremely, again, interesting. Geomancy, landscape, shaping of landscapes, large bodies in landscapes, and how important buffalo is for that, along with the water. Just like I've been thinking for the past couple years with my research. So stay tuned. This is a quite in depth episode, and now it's going to be a reading to give cultural and historical context of the hero fight of the hero versus the dragon, and how it relates back to the Iroquois here in Western New York, the Dragon Path. Shadows of the Western Door, Mason Winfield, the Dragon Path. Our observations about modern geomancy are basic to the field of, quote, earth mysteries, unquote, which has been explored for years by researchers such as Paul Devereaux, Francis Hitching, Janet and Colin Board, and John Michel. For our general observations of sacred architecture, we owe many sources, but especially the author and teacher Sig Longren for his insights and friendship over the years. It was Buffalo artist Franklin LaVoie who put us on to, quote, the dragon path, unquote. And without his able contributions, this spine of insight would not have been available to us. For the original development, both of us are in debt to John Michel and Christine Roan's 12 Tribe Nations, the book that shows the old world leg of, quote, the St. Michael Apollo axis, unquote. The dragon fight. Is there a line of force charged with the power of the earth and symbolized in the language of ancient myth running through the region of our familiar Western Door? The answer may take some development. It's one of the most influential myths in the world. The battle between a culture hero and a big snake. The world serpent's conflict with Scandinavian thunderer Thor ushers in Ragnarok, the end of the world's old cycle. Christian warrior saints like Michael and George kill dreadful monsters that often stand for Satan, for whom, quote, the old dragon, unquote, serves as an alias. Greco-Roman myth has many dragon strikers, but Golden Perseus, killing the stony, serpent-tressed Medusa and a watery snake beast after, may be a good example. Both beasties are baneful. The old world has too many other dragon battles to list. Their overall meaning is not so simple. Though the Chinese dragon may be something far different, to many, the other big snakes have always been deep internal symbols associated with the power of the earth. One might think it symbolic of the proverbial disjointedness in the Western soul, the post industrial separation from the natural environment and all life processes, that these dragons seem fearsome. The natural force they represent appears as a danger to human society, something to be mastered, exploited, killed. Signs of the apparent soul divide may appear even in the great books of India, often seen as a model of wholeness. Culture hero and lightning fighter Indra has his duel with the snaky giant Vritra, who keeps suspended all India's waters. The same mythic issue, whatever it means, may hold in the New World, in this continent, here in the Western Door. There is an immortal tale with the dragon fight motif from Western New York, the conflict of the Iroquois thunder being Hino and the great horned snake of the Niagara River, whose encounter climaxes at Niagara Falls, even shaping the earth. This is a long developing cycle of tales, seeming critical to the heart of their mystery. Yet the Iroquois would never be linked to the Western Soul Divide. Nowhere, it seems, is there a people more connected to the earth. The simplest illustration would be to think of some of the names the Iroquois nations had for themselves. The Mohawk were the people of the Flint, the Cayuga, the people from the swamp, the Seneca people of the Great Hill. Derived from the earth in their root terms for themselves, the Iroquois can hardly be said to express the disconnectedness between earth and humankind so handily charged of the industrial West. This cannot be the dragon's message. Rather than a vengeful, animate being bent on murder, the dragon must represent a natural force in need of strategic management. It's fearful because it's awesome. Awesome because it's mighty. The conflict of the demigodly hero with this beast may be harrowing and dreadful, but is actually productive. His transfixion of the dragon with his lance, often lightning bolts, represents not the killing of a living creature, but the fixing and leashing of the force of the earth. In Europe and parts of Americas, this event is commemorated with great shrines or mighty myths at special spots, often representing the dragon's burial place. The building on the strategic site may be thought to channel its energy. Okay, so welcome everybody. It's been a while. Good to be back. And if I can get a 5x5, we can get going on this. So let's put that up here right quick. Welcome everybody. Again, it's Berserker Bear. So this will be the second half. And I appreciate everyone for. I'll stop by and say what's up in the comment section. But yeah, it's been a while, so it's good to get my feet back wet with you guys and present dragons. Boy, this was a big one to take a chunk off of. I did take a little bit of a break, been doing work around the house. It's been nice out, so it is good to see you guys. Now, what you see on screen is kind of the underlying tone or the theme of like what I want to get at here. You know, it's like I said initially, I like to wander with my research, but as you met my wife, she's a good base, a solid rock for me. So, you know, we all have been had our history taught to us through the mainstream as it matriculates down from higher education. So again, in with the theme and the undertone of this, all I want to put out there is that it's okay to go off the beaten path every now and again. Okay. And as long as you have some good solid faith, these type of questions, historically speaking, when you look back through the lens of history, I believe is okay to ponder the idea if dragons were real, because, you know, we don't necessarily know. And all the research that I have done, a lot of the mainstream just takes the angle of, oh, it's completely mythological It's a primordial Jungian archetype. And what about the other angle of the fact that maybe they might be real? So that's all that I'm going to show you here. We're going to go over a little bit more in depth on how it was mythologically, pop culture wise, and show some things that the mainstream presents. Like, for example, the Pleistocene mega-fauna. All right, let's get right into it, y'all. Pleistocene mega-fauna in dinosaurs, but we can't posit the notion of dragons. So let's just play this right quick. I dropped this on my IG. And again, I'm going to come in and say what's up to the chat real quick. Thanks again for everybody who's being here. But take a look at the idea that I'm getting at with this. So not all who wander are lost. I showed the quote from Tolkien, which is kind of the essence of what he thinks about it. Let's start some music here. And if that music's too loud in the background, let me know. But it's going to be playing throughout just to give us some kind of cohesion, if you will. 7-Eleven Lucas, welcome. Okay, so I'll be going back and forth. We read that this quote. Tolkien was the man. And again, thanks a lot, Dad, for that t-shirt. I should be wearing it right now. And I'm going to show you some more slides of the idea of what I'm getting at from what I just explained. So mega-fauna. I'm not saying that this is not real. Okay. And how's my audio check? Yep. So I'm not saying that the mega-fauna is not real. I'm going to explain my argument. So we have stuff like this that the mainstream academia posits as what happened in the last ice age or the animals that were out there. Very interesting. Also dinosaurs. Okay. Now I'm not right. You're not wrong. I'm not saying this is not a video to prove dragons were real and prove dinosaurs weren't. All I'm saying is that we're given these type of this data from mainstream, Pleistocene megafauna, dinosaurs. We could talk about the age of them or whatever. I'm going to show you a quick clip that generalizes the idea of what I'm trying to say here. And we have the right to question what they say when they propose dinosaurs and Pleistocene megafauna, but not this. Did this happen? Was this actually in the antediluvian times, pre-flood? Because I do believe in creation per my Christian. Oh, thank you, John Martin. Per my Christian faith. Okay. So we posit dinosaurs. We posit Pleistocene megafauna. Not stuff like this or this. Not so fast. That's what we're going to get into. So with that, I'm going to play a quick clip, but let's actually come in and say what's up to everybody. Homestead Fielding. I'm actually using your mic right now. And Laura Bayer sent me this mic. It's a great mic. I'm starting to use it a lot more now. So thank you for that. We got John Martin. Music volume is good. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. As long as I'm coming through 5x5, we're good. So this will be a back and forth open hip fire session of my take on what dragons are. Jay Rusha, I have your lights that I'm using also right now. Thank you very much. Paulo, what's up? Good to see you. There are stories of miners identifying dinosaur tracks on the top of natural cave ceilings. Yeah, that's one of the things that we're going to get into here. Where does that myth come from that they come up from the ground? And if you look at the Asian culture, they're more of a etherical of the air, of clouds and stuff like that. But let's stick to the script here, and I'm going to play you a brief clip from, well, you'll recognize the show, but to lay some groundwork and to show you exactly what we're going to posit here, this is a good clip for you. So again, thanks for stopping back, and here we go. Bear with me. This is hip fire. This is live, so it might take me a minute to go back. And also, we're going to use some of my books. This is Junior Classics that I have. Of course, it tells and details the story of St. George and his battle with the dragon in Libya. And if you paid attention in the beginning, we're going to do mountain dragons and how they do certain dragons do represent mountains and the underworld. It's kind of an inversion and also a cycle of things. Also, the hero battle of them. So that's a book that I have, and I also have, we'll look at these right quick as well. This is a real quick novel that I didn't read yet. This will give the essence of the Chinese dragon and how they look at things. Western is more of a, fire-breathing, malevolent, whereas the Eastern Chinese dragon is more benevolent and revered. And I think that that's exemplified very well in this quote that's in the beginning of this book. To the Chinese, the dragon is not an evil creature, but is a god and the friend of men who worship him. He holds in his power prosperity and peace, ruling the waters and the winds. He sends the good rain and is hence the symbol of fecundity. In the Xia dynasty, 2 dragons fought a great duel until both disappeared, leaving only a fertile foam from which were born the descendants of the Xia. Thus, the dragon came to be looked upon as the ancestors of a race of heroes. So, Asian culture looks at it differently. They actually seek them out for wisdom. They revere them, whereas in the Western culture or Westernized, and it is attributed a little bit to Christianity, looking at dragons in an evil light, obviously because Archangel Michael, Saint Michael, did battle with Satan to get him out of the garden, and Satan did turn into a dragon. So let's go back and forth between that, and let's show that clip. And these are all the windows that we're going to go through, y'all. So we got a little bit of time here. Bear with me, and I appreciate your patience. And spend a minute, so again, bear with me. All right, so wait till you hear this quote from this lecture, and then watch this clip. So this is what it's going to be, a bunch of clips from videos. I'm going to lend my insight, and we're just going to go, and I'll weave a thread through the idea that it's okay to go off the beaten path. It's okay to wander, especially when you're thinking about things like dragons, mythological creatures that may have been more real than we think. That said, there's a good preface for this little excerpt right here.
These kind of far out there ideas. How do you like this idea? There's a group of people that say that dragons were real, and I'll explain. Around the same time period in, China, South America, Africa, all these different Rome, all these places depicted people fighting dragons, right? And every dragon was slightly different, but it was all a giant scaly animal that could fly. Group that says this, they're saying the evidence is the reason there's no fossils of dragons is because they had bird bones and hollowish bones. They break down very easily and they don't fossilize. If there were lizards big enough to fly around and eat people, they didn't have bones that could fossilize. A small population of these giant flying lizards existed and encompassed all these different countries where they all depicted fighting dragons in their own way, and they were all killed off by knights or whatever it is, and then didn't fossilize.
Fire breathing would actually be possible. After all,
Yeah, that's interesting, and that's kind of what we're going to be getting at. So why bite off dragons, Dustin, and why tackle dragons? Why do that? I told you in the beginning intro, it kind of leads back to what I've been doing here in my work in Buffalo with the Dragon Path. And Robbie Radbear, who was in the actual chat right now, is my partner. Excuse me, guys. Sorry about this. So I want to have some music in the background. Yeah, so it tracks back to the Dragon Path and the myth that the Iroquois legend of Hino is a thunder god here of the Iroquois. And we're going to go over that because it's very significant here in Western New York, aka the Western Door, aka the Dragon Path. Now, we're going to follow up on this for my research with Robbie and the Erie Canal, because I think that the Erie Canal was actually Eric Portage and was here back in the day, but we'll get into that again. Sorry to be repeating myself, but let's learn about Hino, and then we're going to hear a lecture from this gentleman. But yeah, why tackle dragons? So I bite off chunks of history when I can, alongside doing what I do here with my research in Buffalo. With that, finding the Western Door, I come to realize it's also the Dragon Path through this lecture and through what this guy's saying about Hino, the thunder god of the Iroquois. And we're just going to go over my thoughts on that right now and how that will lead into what we're going to do in research after like the mounds of Western New York, even all in New York. I did it a little bit before with Robbie Radbeer, but that's why it's so significant. You might think it's random for me to pick dragons. It kind of is, but not really when it's related back to my area. And, the mainstream explanations of what dragons are doesn't necessarily add up. Like we have the aphidophobia, where it's like the fear. We all have a common fear of dragons or serpents or things that slither. That's one mainstream explanation. The other is the dinosaur bones. People think that mainstream archaeologists think that people are getting confused, like proto-man is getting confused when they found dinosaur bones, or actually when they found dinosaur bones, they were maybe mistaking them for dragons. Is that the thing? We'll go over it. Another thing is, tall tales around the campfire. They literally say that, the dragon or the alligator that attacked you over the campfire turned in to be like 20 feet long and huge. So tall tales, that's another mainstream explanation as to what's going on with why we all remember dragons, why every culture has a very significant mythological dragon creation story. Almost all of them, from the natives to Sumer, and we'll go over that too, to Australia and even Russia. Certain aspects we're only going to dive into on a general sense. We're not going to go into deep Russian stuff or even India stuff, because I did cite that in the beginning reading, but we're going to do it from a local sense with the Iroquois, and then track it back to Sumer and who they say was the first dragon. And is it actually just an echo of a previous culture? When history plants itself and says that the first civilizations were Sumerian, but they actually say that the mythology they have seems to indicate that there was another culture before. So that's a major problem and an anomaly. We're going to go over that too. So Hino was the thunder spirit of the Iroquois and the Seneca people. He is also known as Hino or Hinon or Hinun. Hino lives in the cloud of the far west and his rainbow as his wife, and has Rainbow as his wife, and is accompanied by the eagles Kinu and Osadiega. Kinu is a golden eagle, and Osadiega carries a lake of dew on his neck. They're also really connected with water dragons. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Well, we keep on going down. Hino is described as a peaceful, benevolent being, the enemy of witches and evil persons, and a friend of corn, beans, squashes, apart from being associated with thunders. So thunder god, boom. Keep going. In Iroquois mythology, Hino has descended to Earth twice. On the first occasion, Gono Doyak, a young hero who was the servant of Hino and empowered with the spirit of thunder, was commanded to kill the great water snake of the Great Lakes, also of the Niagara River, as you heard in the reading. So that tracks right back to home, and it leads me into the direction of the natives, which I'm going to be doing with Robbie. So we learned that. Now let's learn a little story of Hino, because he does appear to show up to young warriors in a bear guise. So I'm going to close these windows as we go through it. Thank you again for sticking with me. And yeah, so he is the thunder god. It's like when I say I threw a rock out and checked to see what was going on with the essence of dragons, it was a boomerang for sure, because I went to Sumeria, I went to Asia, metaphorically speaking, to learn their mythologies. And that's one of the reasons why it took me so long to put this out, is I had to do a crash course in ancient history of Sumer, their mythology, and all that. So real quick, I just wanted to point this little story out, because it's for young warriors of the Iroquois nation and Seneca nation. This hits home. So once, when the Senecas were at war with the Cherokees, they got very hungry, and seeing a bear, they chased it till it came to a den, and one of the men followed it into the den. When some distance in, he no longer saw the bear, but he saw a fire, and around it a number of men. A very old man looked up and asked, now that old man would be Hino, "Why did you try to shoot one of my men?" "I sent him out to entice you to us. I want to send word to the oldest man in your camp. Tell him from me that his friend is here and in need of tobacco. Tomorrow, as many of your people as care can come to see us. So those warriors go on to actually defeat the serpent that they were given the power of thunder by Hino in this story. So I just thought that was interesting to share. Again, it tracks back to the natives, and we're going to hear a quick little clip of this lecture right now and keep it moving. I hope everything is going good and paced well. And hey, Chris, Iron Man Bear, the book that you reference is actually in this. We're going to go over this article when I get to it. Pop culture dragons, the Earth Sea cycle, and the wizards that are in that story, Iron Man Bear, are pretty cool. I appreciate you dropping that one. I had already had this article when you said that, but I didn't even look and see Earth Sea in there. So that said, keep this St. Michael's line in mind while you're listening to this little quick excerpt from Franklin LaVoie regarding Western New York. All of these will be put in the info link, or the links will be put in the info description for you. I'll probably be doing that tomorrow because, again, this is quite extensive. But pay attention to what this guy says. This is at the end of the lecture, and I highly encourage you all to listen to this lecture because this is my motivation for Buffalo and how it tracks back to dragons.
Your pathway to this thought process, what led you?
Well, I was just finished reading The 12 Tribe Nations and the Science of Enchanting the Landscape by John Michel. I had come back to Buffalo from California in 1990. I was up on the observation deck of Buffalo City Hall. Just finished reading this and I had an epiphany. I said, my goodness, Buffalo's on the dragon track. I knew that there was a dragon legend. And so I understood that Buffalo is a geographic magnet and that it's just a place where inevitably and invariably if the archaeological record hadn't been washed away by seiche or tidal wave after tidal wave, we would see that there's always been an historical depth to Buffalo. It is as deep as the bedrock.
Boom. Did you guys hear that? So we're going to close these windows as I go over them. Now, what he was referring to as the dragon path is the St. Michael's line. And I referred to St. Michael the archangel, before he cast Satan out of paradise. And this will be in the link description. The Wikipedia tells briefly about it. St. Michael's line is a postulated ley line, which are also looked at in depth in this book that I just read from. Is a postulated ley line connecting monasteries dedicated to the Archangel Michael in Europe and in the Middle East. Now, what Franklin LaVoie just said, I didn't track this line out to go out to see if it goes through Buffalo, but what he just said, it does. So we're going to go off the strength of what he said. Seems to be a very well-researched gentleman. Hopefully I can meet with him eventually, because I am going to be meeting with Mason Winfield again coming up mid-August. So shout out to Mason Winfield. That's one heck of a name, sir. But that's also one heck of a book. And he also has other books, so look at him. Look him up. That said, I got put onto this St. Michael's line from Franklin LaVoie through research and more with Mason, with what he does in the Western New York. And it's very interesting. The aligned monasteries include Scaling Michael, Ireland, St. Michael's Mount in Cornwall, Mount St. Michael, Normandy, a beautiful place. Mount St. Michael, that's one of the best ever. Sacra di San Michele in Italy. What is significant about that line in all these places, they have a myth about them, about a dragon, whether the mountain that the monastery is on has a dragon underneath it. And again, you could see that in more detail in this article. It's way more in depth than the Wikipedia one. I'll leave this one in the description. It tells you all about it. This is, again, kind of a second next level in depth on dragons. I'm not going to go over in detail each little piece of or breadcrumb that I leave for you. You got to pick up where I leave it off. Okay, so I'm just pointing back to why Western New York is so important, and the whole dragon culture thing and Iroquois mythology. Does it also have to do with Vikings possibly being here in the Erie Canal? That's why it piqued my interest. So we got that, geomancy and ley lines and mountain dragons. I found this article through researching the feng shui of landscapes after listening to Franklin LaVoie's lecture. And this is absolutely unbelievable, because so what we're gonna do off of this is track into what I showed you with Wow and Namis. This is a place in Libya that I suspect possibly could be a slumbered or dead dragon. Maybe. I'm not right, you're not wrong, but I'm going to build a narrative for that. And let's just keep that in mind, and we're going to show you that from Google Earth. It is crazy, but you know what? Look at, like I said, okay, you guys are positing, mainstream says these things were happening. And these things. Is it really too out of the realm of possibility to postulate that dragons may have been real? Or is it just an archetype of the cycle of things and the hero and the anti-hero and as above, so below? It's okay to stay off or to venture off the path and ask these questions, in my opinion. So keep that in mind. And let's go back to mythological dragons. So yeah, keep it in mind that Pleistocene mega-fauna were some extremely huge animals. I mean, look at what you have over here all the way to the left, the man. We got a short-faced bear right behind him. You have these mastodon, the ground sloth in the middle. Huge. These things were huge. But nope, not dragons, guys. We get laughed at. I'm saying not so fast. So let's look a little bit further. And where are we going to next? I read my monologue. Detail there. Okay, we got that. Bear with me, y'all. So let's read this article a little bit, because that will give credence into what I'm going to say about that place, Wow and Nabis. And as a matter of fact, let's pull up Google Earth while we're at it and then read this article. Again, thanks for stopping by, everybody. Let's say hello to the chat. This article will be in the link description. John Martin, what's up, man? There goes Robbie Radbear, shouting out Jay Rusha. So, again, I keep on saying Robbie. That's my man right there. He lives near, a little bit more towards the center of the state, still in western New York. But, Robbie, if you can say where it is, if you don't mind. PT Rip, I appreciate all the information. I got that DM that you sent me in IG. Thanks, dude. I'm going to have to look into that further. Mine was going kind of crazy with this, getting this video out for the past month, as you heard my wife attest to that. So, geomancy and the energy of ley lines in the actual earth. The relationship of the Feng Shui practitioner with the land is a bond, an understanding of the flow of energy in the earth and how to cooperate with it. By listening to the earth, the Feng Shui practitioner becomes attuned to the energy of the universe, for this energy is manifest in the air as wind, in the earth as water and land, in the sky as the stars. Eva Wong, okay? Now let's scroll down here, because what we're going to be looking into is mountain dragons. And again, we're going to go into myth in the etymology. First, let's do the etymology of dragons. We're going back and forth here too much, but let's lay some more groundwork. Dragon, a fabulous animal, common to the conceptions. Okay, they don't say that it's a memory. You know, why is that? We'll address it. A fabulous animal common to the conceptions of many races and peoples. Almost all of them, actually. From Old French dragon and directly from Latin draconum, nominative Draco, huge serpent, dragon, from Greek drakon. Genitive is drakontos, serpent, giant fish, apparently from drak. Strong aerocyst, stem from darkestai. So there's a lot of stuff going on there. As I understand it, the term actually itself, dragon, comes from the Greek derivative of it, or you have a drake. So I'm going to follow up with another episode down the road a little bit with a little bit more esoteric knowledge on dragons, big animals and stuff like that, titans. But that gives you the etymology, and this link will be in the description as well. So let's read from this article, and this will also help to give some historical context of the mythological aspect of it. The dragon Smaug appears in The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. Dragons appear in the Harry Potter books by J.K. Rowling, Dragon Riders of Pern, and by Anne McCaffrey, the role-playing game Dragon Dungeons and Dragons, Ursa K. Le Guin's Earthsea Cycles, the rock group Imagine Dragons, and the Song of Ice and Fire by George R.R. Martin. This last work was turned into television series Game of Thrones. There you go. So when I do my research and deep dive, I look for historical anomalies. Now, this is one major one. Let's pay attention to dragons appear right here. The first sentence. Now, this is going to lead us into pop culture dragons, but we're going to do a little bit more on the myth and how it's important with the hero versus the dragon and what that exemplifies over time. Is it a common memory that we have? Is the mainstream right? Let's see, because I'm going to show you right now an anomaly, an actual contradiction in the mainstream of things, okay? Dragons appear in folklore and myths of every culture around the world. Dragons first appeared in ancient Mesopotamian art and literature. The Mushushuzu, or the Mushkajuzu, was the scaly dragon with hind legs and talons of an eagle, feline forelegs, a long neck and tail, a horned head, a snake-like tongue, and a crest. The Mushushu is depicted on the famous Ishtar Gate of the city of Babylon, which dates to the 6th century BC. Now, here's where the anomaly comes in. And I'm going to play a clip from a video. And we're going to keep that in mind. This article, and I've seen other ones that keep saying that the first dragon ever, or it was first written about, is from Mesopotamia. And their most earliest mythological story or creation story is Sumerian, and that's of an old dragon called Ker. We're going to learn about him. There's actually one before Tiamat. So now that said, did you hear that? The first ones ever writing in depiction were in Mesopotamia. And you go over to the Asian dragon and you scroll down in Wikipedia and you hear of a common thing that was found in Asia, Chinese, called the jade dragon, which dates to like 6,000 years ago. So which one is it? Is it Sumer, Mesopotamia, that had the first depictions of dragons, or is it Asia with the jade dragon being found literally carved 6,000 years ago? So that's the quandary, and that's a caveat here of my inquiry. Why does Sumer place its stamp on being the first civilization ever, with hunter-gatherers moving from that to farmers? But when you address the mythology of it, even historians and archaeologists will say that their myth, even as early as back to Sumerian, seems to come from another one, whether it's Proto-Indo-European or Asian or even Indian. So that's a major problem, in my opinion. You place the stamp on first civilizations for historically speaking, but for myth and mythologically speaking, you're like, oh, well, it's, probably from before. Well, we need to figure that out, because again, that represents a major contradiction in the mainstream of things. And I aim to figure that out. Why? So that was Jade Dragons. And if you are talking about dragons and if they're real or not, you do got to bring up the Jungian archetype, because that's when I say, is it a collective subconscious fear that we all have of things that slither or serpentine things? That's completely understandable. The Achilles heel with the Jungian archetype, though, is, and what I suppose is almost a whitewashing, trying to explain why we have it as a common quote unquote memory. Okay. The Jungian archetype might actually be put in place to remove the idea that we did have it as a memory. Let's go further with that. The Jungian dragon, and trying to define the archetypal dragon in Jungian terms, we must first understand Jung's notion of the archetype. Jung refers to the archetype as the type in the psyche. Okay, Jung refers to the archetype as the type in the psyche, an inner mental image, type being derived from Greek tupos, meaning imprint or blow. Here we go. Though an archetype as an imprint presupposes that there was an imprinter in the first place, Jung does not concern himself with this. Rather, he concentrates on the collective unconscious that dominates, yada yada. Oh, it's a collective subconscious that we all share of being afraid of snakes. Notice how they just kind of breeze over the imprinter needs something in the first place to base off of. Like I say, is it a memory of a antediluvian thing that was just as real as a short-faced bear? And keeping in mind what that gentleman said initially on the Toe Rogan, did they have thinner bones? And is that why we're not seeing them? It's a possibility, but then what are dragons? Or what are dinosaur bones? So all I wanted to do with the Jungian archetype of the dragon is point that out, the Achilles heel. You know, though an archetype as an imprint presupposes that there was an imprinter in the first place, Jung ignores that. So effectively what he's doing is, from what I could see, and I'll get some feedback in this, and what do you guys think? He's trying to give an excuse as to why it could not be a memory. It's like, what if we share it because it's a collective memory because they were actually real, kind of deal, like almost with the flood myth or the flood story that happened. Okay, so we're going over stuff here. Let me see where I'm at with my underline that detail of Terra. Okay, yeah, we did detail Terra Incognita. Let's come back and see what's up to the chat, because now we're going to get into some either mythological dragons or pop culture dragons. Like I'll show some examples, like Falkor would be an example of a mythological, of a pop culture dragon. Make sure this loads in. Again, thanks for your patience, everyone. Thanks for being here. Thanks for waiting for such a long period of time before I got this out. And I hope I'm making some kind of sense. Okay, so we did the Jungian archetype. Now we're going to get into what we were talking about with Saint. So I initially said St. George versus the dragon, and Cappadocia or Libya might have been a mythological dragon. I think it's more of a pop culture dragon, because mythological, you have to distinguish between creation myth, like for example Sumerians or Iroquois, and pop culture dragons that are just, we know from TV, or Falkor example. And for this instance, St. George and the Dragon, it was pop culture of the time. It's not associated with the creation of a specific culture or civilization. So you even have pop culture back in the day. And again, Falkor comes to mind. There's other dragons that come to mind. I'll show them right. I'll show them right now, because we're going to get into the myth of things after that. And we're going to see who mythologically speaking, what's the name of the first dragon, or that's attributed to be the first dragon. Now, this guy right here, this is a little bit of a prelude to going into what I'm going to do about, is this a slumber dragon? Is that a dead sleeping dragon per what we see in? I mean, this just blew my mind, guys. I'm not sure. I did find this article recently, and I had WoW and Namus on my brain for a couple years now. And we're going to go there. Keep this in mind. These are like dragon or mountain ridges. Could they be extinct dragons? I don't know. Like I said, I'm not right. You're not wrong. This is not an episode to prove dragons are right. More so, not all who wander are lost. Keep that in mind. So, where were we? Dragons first appeared in Sumeria, huh? Well, let's see. Let's go check out clip number 3. Now, pay attention and listen to this one, y'all.
The earliest clear depictions of dragons do not come from Mesopotamia, but far to the northeast, in the region known now as Inner Mongolia in China. The Hongshan culture created many. The earliest clear depictions of dragons do not come from Mesopotamia, but far to the northeast, in the region known now as Inner Mongolia in China. The Hongshan culture created many unique artifacts dating approximately between 4,700.
There goes that jade dragon, like 6,000 years ago. Again, this is a clip from the Fortress of Lu. Great channel, great history channel. That's a direct contradiction right there. Were they first attributed in writing or in figurines in Mesopotamia? like 2300 BC, like the Akkadian Empire? Or are we going back to 4000 BC? Which one is it, guys? Now, not directly attacking anybody. Fortress Alu, obviously not even mainstream. I'm just giving it a gut check.
And 3000 BC. Some of these artifacts are recognizable as dragons. Dragons are, after all, the premier mythological creatures of China.
Keep in mind what I said too about Sumer likes to place their stamp on history and being the first civilizations, but when it talks about the myth, they're like, oh, well, yeah, we admit that it could be from something different, something from before. Well, is that Asia? Are you guys literally just copying it? That might be the nexus of the 1,000-year off too, possibly. That is a possibility. So let's keep it going.
But this places their existence in a recognizable form thousands of years before the first Chinese emperors, in a region that was, in its earliest historical period, not under the control of the Han people, the majority ethnic group of China, but Manchu, distantly related to Turkic and Korean, and likely Japanese. Settlers from northern Asia that once dominated Mongolia, northeastern Russia, and likely they crossed the waters to Japan, bringing not only their language, but the roots of their mythology.
So the roots of the mythology from Asian dragons went into Japan and back and forth a little bit. Now, the only reason that I wanted to point that out is the anomaly and wandering off the path. It's okay to question and go, you know, I guess a professor of history might laugh at me to posit that question, but they'll still admit that, oh, well, the myth comes from something before, either Proto-Indo-European, like Irish culture maybe, and possibly Asian, possibly Indian. So that requires further research. And what do you guys think about that? Does it seem like the Sumerian myth is copying? If you look into it, you got dragons from Ker to Tiamat to Marduk slaying Tiamat, and they're involved with waters. Once Marduk is slain, you can look up the actual story of Baal and the dragon. Baal is actually Marduk, okay? That's how everything is a derivative of one another, from Sumerian to Akkadian to Babylonian, even to Assyrian. It all seems like literally a copy of itself over and over again. And if Sumerian myth is the earliest of all of them, and that seems to be a copy of what's before, a derivative of what's before, we have a major problem, and we have the ability to question it now. This has got to get opened up. So I'd highly recommend looking into trying to understand. And again, the first Sumerian myth predates what you're looking on your screen right now, Bell and the Dragon. So when I look into something, I want to find the fundamentals of it. That's why it took me so long to present this. You look at Babylonian, when you take that one article, it says that Mesopotamia is the first depictions of dragons. So I was like, oh, I got to learn all about that. You know, I got to learn all about the Akkadian mythology, Babylonian, Sumer, and I did. And the dragons that's most prevalent in there is Tiamat. Tiamat is slain by Marduk, and that's how the earth is created. Whatever. Look into that. But there's one that's hidden. There's a dragon of Sumerian culture that's hidden. And you're looking at this guy right now. This is what's going to drag us into Wow and Namus, okay? Because Sumerian myth tells us that Enki slayed the dragon Ker. After he dragged Ereshkigal into the underworld, the netherworld, if you will. Enki went down there and did battle with Ker, the first dragon per Sumerian myth. And he's now Ker, who... fundamentals. Who's the first one? That's what I want to dig up. So I kind of went past Babylonian, past Tiamat, who everybody exalts and whatever, says it's the dragon of Babylonia. Well, what about Ker? Because Ker is before, and it's quite possible that Tiamat is a derivative of Ker. So I'm going back. I want to dig it all up, right? And why is Ker so shallow? It was very hard for me to find information on the dragon of Ker, allegedly the first dragon ever. Okay. Well, again, this is going to track us back into the landforms and mountain dragons. And we're going to make a huge posit here with Wow and Namus. So wait till you see this. We're going to directly compare it to a chicken egg on a grand scale. And There's some very convincing possibilities here, y'all. Again, so the word Ker, etymologically speaking, means mountain, okay? And if you look further, the dragon slaying myth and theme was an important motif in Sumer by 3000 BC. And the dragon slaying epic influenced the myths of later groups. Exactly. So there's something that influenced this. Listen to what this says, including the Babylonians and Akkadians. Same thing, pretty much. It's all interchangeable derivatives of each other, even Assyrian. And then Egyptian and the Apep dragon. I don't even want to incorporate that because it will be so long. But again, I have a notion that even Egypt and Egyptology was copied from Sumer. Could it be? I don't know. It seems like that, though. Anyway, for example, the Babylonian epic of creation centered principally around the slaying of the dragon Tiamat. I believe those are the Enuma Elish. Those tablets are called the Enuma Elish, and they involve Tiamat and Marduk. This was inscribed in Akkadian, dating back to the first millennium BC, which is more than 1,000 years later than the Sumerian inscriptions. I doubt that. These timescales are way too long. So the etymology of Ker corresponds to several concepts and meanings that develop over time. One of the primary meanings of Ker is a mountain, which likely influenced the word's later translation to foreign land, and then again simply to land. The name for Sumer itself can be described as Kurgal, or great land. The cosmic concept for the word Ker, which can be identified as Kigal, or great below, which roughly translates to netherworld. So the actual dragon itself symbolizes the underworld. It also symbolizes mountains, okay? That's a as above, so below concept of an inversion, if you will. You can also take that to mean more of the cyclical nature of things. So it's certainly plausible that dragons could just be a metaphor of the cycle of things or a metaphor of a tyrant. But let's keep going because we're going to show some pretty serious, I think, evidence. Okay, so great below, which roughly translates to the netherworld. Thus, the cosmic meaning of Ker is empty space between the primal sea and the earth's crust. I hear that and I think of the Gununga Gap in Norse mythology. So was it copying that? I don't know. Was the Norse mythology in place already at the time, 3000 BC? In my opinion, I believe so. But let's keep going. So what's more on Ker? He's associated with, although Ker was sometimes the home of the dead, it is possible that the flames on escaping gas plumes and parts of the Zagros Mountains would have given those mountains a meaning not entirely consistent with the primary meaning of mountains and the abode of God. So what they're saying is that it was a place, the Zagros Mountains, which is east of Sumer, in a foreign land past the border, and we're going to look at them, exemplify the dragon, Ker. So as above, so below. He represents mountains, also the underworld, and you have that same motif with Apsu, the Babylonian dragon. And it gets extremely convoluted, and I don't even know if I'm explaining it properly, other than leading it into my idea as to what's going on here. So Ker, one of the first Sumerian dragons, represents the Zagros Mountains. Let's go hip fire and figure that out. Zagros Mountains, this is going to be what Ker represents. And they're in Iran, right over the border, across from Sumer. That would represent the place that Enki had to go to right here. These mountains right here would represent Ker. So this is going to lead into, Roger Mudfossil and his pet dragon in North Africa, but we're going to go a little bit more small scale in Libya. Anybody who knows me, I've shouted out Roger before. He's a little bit out there, but I don't agree with space and whatever. That said, he's got his pet dragon up here in North Africa. I think that that's way too big of scale, but if the Earth is a realm and not the globe that I think, maybe it's not. I don't know. I don't necessarily agree with Roger on that level. But way back in the day, if you remember, Roger did briefly go over this little black patch right here. And now I bring into mind like Skyrim, or like P.T. Ripa said in the a comment how caves are associated with dragons as well. In the beginning of the movie Reign of Fire with Christian Bale and McConaughey, the dragon does come up from underground. And the fact that they're all, occurs associated with mountains, let's look into this a little bit further. So, Wau-an-Namas is a volcano in Libya of either Pleistocene or Holocene age. It is located within the eastern Fezzan region. The origin of the volcanism there at Al-Harouj, farther north, is not clear. We're going to look at that. Radiometric dating has yielded an age of about 200,000 years, but other circumstantial evidence points to a formation of the volcano during the Holocene or even historical. So, boom. This thing is purported to be a volcano. Now, we're going to look at that article. Look at this one. Almost looks like a bigger one. And I want to come say what's up in the chat, actually. We're going to look at this article and compare and contrast. Oh, and also another side thing about Pleistocene, as that article stated that volcano might have been made in the Pleistocene era. That is directly related to Pleistocene mega-fauna. Also, that made me think of, History Channel back in the day, or Discovery Channel. I remember one of my favorite insect is the dragonfly. And it just something to note that what mainstream says is the largest extinct insect ever, it actually was a massive dragonfly. So I'm not saying that in any way, shape, or form proves anything, other than I think it's very cool because I love dragonflies. They're the fastest flying insect, and of all extinct insects, that was the biggest, and it's called the dragonfly. Does it mean anything? Well, what do you guys think? Okay, Wau-an-Namas. This is where we're going to do some crazy hipfire speculation, and I'll play some a cool clip or two from Truth Drops. So let's play the first one. Now, was it like this back in the day? Heroes fighting dragons, Marduk slaying Tiamat, Enki slaying Kur, releasing the waters. We're going to show a quick clip from the game Shadow of the Colossus. I've done an in-depth on that before, the actual theme of the game. This is a PlayStation game, probably one of the best games ever made. You're going to see a quick clip of the hero going to fight something that looks like a dragon that's called phalanx. This is just to give you a fantastical idea of, again, not all who wander are lost, and the actual main hero in this game is named Wander. You're about to see a quick clip of the beginning of the fight between Wander and Phalanx, the dragon from Shadow of the Colossus. Here we go. Now, again, I'm not saying that this is 100% for sure what happened. Keep in mind the essence of not all who wander are lost. It's okay to think and posit this stuff, because then you can ask proper questions about going forward against mythology, against is it a memory. So it's a puzzle game, effectively. And the puzzle is there's these giant titans that you have to find a way to scale, climb up, and actually defeat, find their sweet spot, and bring them down. This is the one that looked most like the dragon to me, but there is another flying one that looks like a bird, though. This was the one that, so he's going to try to get up on it. And yeah, this was probably one of the most fun games I've ever played. First came out on PlayStation 2. And then they made a readapted version for PlayStation 4 that I definitely copped. That's the sweet spot. You got to find a couple of them and bring them down. So that's the fantastical escapism that you get when you come and check out Bushwhacking History with Berserker Bear. You know, I don't buy the whole Jungian archetype of things and the whole thing that we went over with the type, because it supposes that you have to have an imprint of it, like it was a memory. And Jung just completely ignores that. Okay. Now, keeping in mind pleistocene mega-fauna. Okay. And we already played the Mongolian clip and the Toe Rogan. Let's give a little bit of pretext here for the dragon Kerr. Do you concur?
Is often considered to be one of the very examples of dragons throughout history stem as far back as the mythologies in Sumerian and Mayan times. Kerr, for example, in literary texts from Sumeria, is often considered to be one of the very first dragons documented in writing, and he is described as living in the void, somewhere above the Earth's layer, but also below the sea.
There goes that as above, so below cycle of things.
He is often subjected to connotations of the underworld, or something of a wicked creature, lurking between the realms. His reputation as a malevolent creature is only further substantiated by his kidnapping of a goddess in Sumerian texts, which he takes with him to the underworld.
That goddess again is Ereshkigal. She's like a prototype, a proto Persephone from Greek mythology. So it's prototypes of each other.
Kerr was successfully slain, though, by the hero Enki, and perhaps it's in stories like these that see several other mythologies and later works of fiction derive inspiration from.
Also in myth, when you slay the dragon, you become the dragon. Very similar to, you got other dragons in mythology like Zeus versus Typhon. That's one of my favorite. Let's actually show some of the named dragons throughout. Obviously you have, let's play, let's get back to the audio tracks. Thanks for your patience, guys. If I'm just shooting off into the aether here, I apologize, but that's what you get when you come over here. Open with. Oh, I can't do that. There goes Smog, OG Smog. First drag. Well, that would be a pop culture dragon, although J.R.R. Tolkien does have a whole mythos about his realm, Middle Earth. But Smog was definitely the first pop culture dragon that I was ever introduced to as far as reading a book. Slain by Bard. Legend. And I got that book right here. There you go. Other pop culture dragons, such as, here we go. Now here goes Apsu. We heard about him. He's in Babylonian myth. Represents the primordial sea. Now that brings to mind primary water that I heard Zerdus talking about with Alpha Vedic recently, which is very interesting. There goes Sigurd slaying Fafnir. He waited in a ditch in the ground till Fafnir walked over and stabbed him through the heart. And that's a common thing, is the slaying the dragon with the there goes Fafnir again, slaying the dragon with the spear. There goes Hino, the thunder god, slaying the serpent of the Niagara River. Now, these are all mythological dragons. Now, if the dragon has a name, there is an associated hero with them. This is Typhon, and that's Zeus. And there's a great battle between these guys that I have depicted here. Sometimes they could be humanized. This is Typhon, and this is from a history channel, Clash of the gods from back in the day, where it shows the battle. And it was probably one of the coolest depicted dragons that I've seen that's has a humanistic form. Now that's Typhon, and he's about to get got in his battle with Zeus right there. Zeus takes him out. And after Zeus takes him out in Greek mythology, he acquires the attributes and more power, like that of Typhon itself. That's the whole thing. When you slay the dragon, the hero acquires their strength. And that notion is put forth in the actual game, Shadow of the Colossus. He takes their soul. Let's listen to this.
As Zeus and Typhon are engaged in this final epic battle, Zeus eventually gets the upper hand and wins via his lightning bolt.
With one final assault, Zeus drives Typhon and his Titan allies down into Tartarus, where they are damned to spend eternity in a fiery abyss. According to the ancients, it was across the Mediterranean, on the island of Sicily, that Zeus's enemies descended into hell.
Now, this is where we're going to hear the whole tracking back to mountains. That's why I played this one, because Kerr and the Zagros Mountains, you have Typhon with Etna. And then we're going to do Wow and Namus. Is it a slumber dragon, a dead dragon?
To the volcanic crater of Mount Etna. Local legend says Typhon is still inside and has been behind all of the volcano's eruptions over the centuries.
Greeks used this myth as a way of explaining why lava was constantly pouring out of the volcano. They explain that as either the remnants of Zeus's lightning constantly shooting out, or of the flames of Typho still breathing just a little bit, exploding flame out of the center of the volcano.
It is also said that Typhon causes destructive windstorms. In fact, his name is the basis for the word typhoon.
There you go. So again, dragons also, metaphorically speaking, a mainstream explanation is that they just represent forces of nature, as you heard them detail. That very well could be, but you have Mount Etna that is said to have Typhon, the dragon, underneath it, which is one of the coolest dragons out there, Typhon. And I always thought that, but as I learned about Kerr, because he's so shelved, and because he has such a similar story from Thor, when Thor goes out in the water to get Jormungandr, the sea serpent. That's why I think Kerr is shelved, historically speaking, because people who know history and mythology will say, wow, that sounds very similar to Thor and Jormungandr. Anyway, they all could be copies of each other, and even just copies of what Michael did with Lucifer. Okay, so it requires more thinking and more research. And what do you guys think? Okay, so with that, mountains and Mount Etna, Typhon. There goes the sea serpent that Thor went after. There's actually two paramount dragons in Norse mythology. You have Jormungandr right here. He goes around the realm. You also have Nidhogg, who eats on the roots of the tree of life. Yggdrasil. So let's keep it going. Mountains and dragons. Do they represent sleeping, slumbering dragons? What do you guys? I'm going to keep this up, and we're going to go to the chat. So PT Ripa has a question. Why develop a word for dragon? The word must have been necessary to create to signify what a person was referring to. Yeah, great. It's a great question. Exactly. That's a wonderful angle to take on it, because where did it come from? And that's what I think about when you say that, Paolo, if you don't mind me calling you Paolo, brother, is the Jungian archetype and how he just looks over the type, and how the type actually is defined by something that has to have been there before as an imprint, like a memory, right? So great question. Thanks for that one. We got here Pushkin Castle, Isabella. Did you see my comment? Okay, here we saying what's up to each other. Mr. Fail a lot. I like preserving and shredding what's not to be preserved. There we go. Robbie Radbear says logos. There we go. That's what's up. Again, I'm probably going off in many different directions here, but I hope there's some kind of common cohesive theme. And all I'm doing is saying it's okay to posit the idea that dragons were real, because again, Pleistocene mega-fauna were amazingly awesome just to look at them. But you got the dire wolf. Again, I said the short-faced bear, the ground sloth, they were huge. Then you got dinosaurs from 30 million years ago, whatever. But we're can't say dragons. Give me a break. Okay, let's read a little bit more about mountain dragons and then tail it off with a bird's eye view of this place. Oh yeah, also let's do a little preview here. Dragons bulk. Bear with me. Did pleistocene, Libya, worms. I gotta do worms again. Okay, so I got some pictures of Namus up and close. That any of you can find these pictures on the internet. So this is that place that's supposed to be a volcano from the Pleistocene era, up close and personal. Just notice the features, and that's all I'm going to do. This is what that place looks like. It's right in the middle of the desert, and the black stuff that's around it is actually classified as ash. Just a very, like, almost like hellish looking landscape, if you will. And I mean, keeping in mind, they say Mount Etna is Typhon and it's underneath it. This is what it looks from really high up. And it's almost like there's two of them. I'm going to tell you what I think's going on here, guys. Keep in mind Merlin and the Earthsea story about dragons and wizards. What was going on in the antediluvian days? I know they speak of dark things that were happening. Is that wizards? Were wizards literally culminating? I don't know. I'm speculating here, pure speculation, but again, shouldn't be laughed at, because mythology doesn't mean that it's false. Mythology means that it just doesn't fit nicely into someone's timeline of things. Keep that in mind. And again, I'm not saying that that's 100% for sure a dead dragon, but with what I just presented to you, maybe it is. Maybe it's an extinct dragon. Okay. Now let's give a little context here. So, got some more pictures of this thing. Keeping in mind the actual how it looks. That's close up. A little bit further out. Now, this is detail of a chicken egg. Okay. Note the shape of this thing. Okay. Note the shape of this thing. Huh? All I'm doing is showing similarities. Now, do you guys notice anything? Let's go back to that article. And bring up. This is going to get further. We're going to go a little bit further down the rabbit hole here, and I'm going to be tailing out because it's getting a little bit late. So, bottom right, dead dragon. Right here. So, I'm just saying that it does look a little similar. And we're going to read this article, the mountain dragon portion of it, to give context in how the Asians looked at things. Was it feng shui, or were they really having a memory of these things were possibly alive back in the day? They were possibly a thing, antediluvian, we would say, last ice age, in the time period of Pleistocene. Keeping in mind, were their bones thinner, like the gentleman said at the jump of the episode? Okay, so mountain dragons. Oriental thinking refers to the energy of the land in terms of the metaphor of a dragon. The movement of energy in the land is said to resemble the movement of this mythical animal. In terms of Western thought, a dragon can be said to be a path of concentrated earth energy, like a ley line. That is, again, described in my Shadows of the Western Door book. Energy dragons are therefore most often found along mountain ranges and are associated with topographical forms. Because the Earth generates electromagnetic fields, dragons are also associated with magnetic fields. Look at these things. So they're saying that certain types of mountain ranges might have these appearances, and are they the feng shui of the dragon of things? Or, like, I got a shout out again, Mud Fossil University. Not saying everything that he says is right or true, but there's another channel that's similar to his called Tyson's Mud Fossil Adventures, where he goes out and gets on these very type of mountains and kind of boots on the ground, does this thing. Okay, so earth dragons, like their mythical counterparts, comprise a main body, arms, legs, a head, a mouth, and jaws, and most importantly, veins of vital force which carry the power of the dragon itself. In general terms, the dragon vein is said to run on the top of the ridge forming the dragon's body, and the central range from which other ranges sprout forth is said to be the spine. A well-developed mountain dragon therefore consists in an obvious body with a well-aligned spine, strong ranges forming the arms, and clearly defined veins. When the vein or the spine is broken, misaligned, or absent, the dragon is said to be sick, broken, or even dead. Okay. So then you have mountain classifications. This is a feng shui thing, and how the undulating terra could lend credence to not just a metaphorical thing of dragons. Did these things fall to the ground? Like we know happened with the Bible and the Fallen and the Watchers. I've showed clips of that before where the giant metal ore veins and mountains might even be the veins of the Watchers. And this is kind of hinting at that. So, examples of mountain dragons. Here you go. These are actual ranges, and like they said in that excerpt up top, the spines of dragons. So, could it be? Could it be? And there's also another cool notion of the armchair dragon in a mountain. Orientation also plays a role in this matter, as a site that would orient itself towards the south would also benefit from energetic qualities of that direction. Hence, the black turtle is best when located to the north, the red phoenix to the south, and so forth. From this orientation, it is said that the side of the azure dragon, another Asian dragon, is the yang side of the site because it receives the first energy of the sun, and the white dragon is the yin side. Similarly, the front of the site is yang and the rear is yin. So they really paid attention to this. Now we're going to give the essence of the difference between the Western malevolent dragon and the Eastern benevolent dragon in a clip of a movie that I think is hilarious, and I'll give some context. But it's The Golden Child with Eddie Murphy from way back in the day, movie that I love, and Eddie Murphy plays a great role. But what he does is go seek out a Asian dragon, in a sense, for some insight. And the insight is very, very good advice. Again, chicken egg, Wawan Namus. Could it be? Certainly not trying to prove it, but oh yeah, here you go too. So to go a little further, this is the uterus of a female, and we got to look at the endometrium wall here. Okay, pay attention to that. This is a close-up of the endometrium wall, and all I'm doing is going to compare and contrast here. Bear with me. Here goes that possible egg, possibly not, possibly a volcano, whatever. Endometrium wall, though. And it looks like this thing is tracking across the desert. Maybe if it was, who knows? But again, I'm not saying, I'm just saying. It looks similar. Could there have been some real crazy stuff going on back in the day? It's plausible. Listen to what the Asians are saying about the landform, stuff like that. So now let's play a clip that shows the essence of the Asian aspect of the dragon from The Golden Child. Great movie, hilarious movie. The clip shows the essence of the Asian.
Oh, how do you say thank you?
So he's going to consult with a Asian dragon for insight on of the abduction of a child, that a malevolent force, which is actually turns into a dragon at the end of a Western malevolent dragon. So this is a good movie to showcase the play between the benevolent Oriental and the malevolent Westernized dragon, if you will. So he's going to consult with an Eastern dragoness lady for wisdom and insight.
Con xem á, hổ tốt người ta khó dưới này là cái gì kinh nghiệm sang là hổ người ta muốn nhận chắc nó vậy đó.
Not to mention, I gotta say, Eddie Murphy is hilarious in this movie. His charisma and just his little play with the age. I have no idea what this guy is saying, but it is funny. So just take a listen. Hopefully we won't get cut out. Copyright status saying, but I'll give some commentary.
Thì mình sẽ các bạn chắc xin nhận các chỗ căn này. Ok. Hey, ngồi bên này đó, bọn mình hãy cái. Phải không? Đi người.
Oh, did it cut out a little bit? Was I gone? Was I gone for a little bit? That might give an indication that they're going to copyright this one. Rollerblades is known. All right, here we go. Let's just play it.
Một cái vậy đó. Đi ngồi. Đi ngồi.
Mr. Joe. 多謝主你安排。
Now, again, Eddie Murphy and his charismatic nature, the play between, this is an ancient being here, dragon, and Eddie Murphy represents the ignorant, Western cop just trying to figure stuff out. So keeping that in context and as an underlying heads up here. It's hilarious.
You may speak with her. She can't hear you.
Low pan.
Tell me about the golden child.
Every 3,000 generations, a perfect child is born. A golden child. He has come to rescue us.
Rescue us from what?
From ourselves.
Ah.
He is the bringer of compassion. If he dies, compassion will die with him.
So if something happens to the kid, the whole world goes to hell?
The world will become hell.
That's very important, and let's go over that. And again, I'm going to stop and give commentary because just in case. The child, the golden child, represents purity, represents good. And what she's saying is that I think this is a metaphorical truth drop, that if all good and purity is released from the realm, if y'all give up, and whatever's going on now, and you just literally, you lose the attrition to keep on going. What she's saying right now is what will happen. It'll become, now keep that in mind as to, are we manifesting the reality, understanding our faith? And we're wandering here. We're off the beaten path, but these are questions fundamentally that I believe are just to ask and very relevant, especially now, because with the cycle of things, and we might be coming to the end of a cycle of a certain thing. We're living through it right now. Okay.
Ah.
From ourselves.
Ah.
When she says from ourselves, that's when you hold the mirror up, and I say, don't always say they, whatever, the Prometheans or who, the wizards that run this place. You guys know how we talk as bears. Hold the mirror up first. I held the mirror up to the Iosauron for this show. I said that in the beginning, but before you say they, what she just detailed is that we're saving ourselves from ourselves. Because when you go and get the pitchforks and the torches to go head towards the castle for the tyrant, which the dragon might represent the metaphorical tyrant over the ages. And what do you guys think? But let me just say this. When she says ourselves, this is how I come to understand it. We all know the trope of the villagers going to get the pitchforks and the torches and going after the castle or the higher ups in the ivory towers. Let me be explicitly clear on this. what's going on now, what I see people believing in or going off track, that mob will literally light itself on fire and fight amongst itself before it even gets to the castle. We have to understand this. So before we say they, and it's all them, they were just catering in a certain sense to our need for the resources and the convenience of Babylon, if you will. So let's play this again, and I'll let it play through and stop talking.
A perfect child is born. A golden child. He has come to rescue us.
Rescue us from what?
From ourselves.
Ah.
He is the bringer of compassion. If he dies, compassion will die with him.
So if something happens to the kid, the whole world goes to hell?
The world will become hell.
Ah. Not far from that now. Listen, who would want to take the kid anyway?
Those who want evil rather than good.
Can you be a little bit more specific?
We do not know who took him.
Hilarious.
Evil rather than good.
Can you be a little bit more specific?
We do not know who took him.
I love that part.
Well, could you tell me why the people that took him are trying to make him eat blood?
Nothing in this world will hurt him. But if he were to pollute himself with anything impure, he would become vulnerable.
Okay, so if he eats the blood, they can kill him.
Yes.
Oh.
That's the Faust. Don't enter into their world, and they cannot touch you.
Do you have any other questions?
As a matter of fact, I do. What are you doing this weekend? Because your silhouette is kicking.
And there goes Lopan. Something's going on with this guy. Does he even age, the actor? He's been in a lot of things. That's Lopan from Big Trouble in Little China, another classic movie. So, I mean, there we go. That's kind of all I had to present for you guys today. I'll come in and check in on the chat, but that's about it. Like mythology of the dragon, every single culture has it. Pop culture dragons have made their way into our common everyday life through movies, but it's a very deep underlying tone of the cycle of things, because you have stuff like this. The cycle of things. That's the Ouroboros. Ouroboros, the serpent eating its tail. It's a cycle. It indicates things repeat. And it also is indicative of as above, so below. Just like mountains, dragons exemplify mountains. They also exemplify the underworld. And not to mention, with what's going on in the Terra, was the Earth able, antediluvian times, was the Earth actually able to create abiotic with the help maybe of wizards? I'm not sure. I'm not saying that that's 100% for sure. But I know if you go look at this place, this is all ash. And it's a very interesting parallel to the movie Reign of Fire, because actually the dragon in Reign of Fire ate ash for his power. So, yeah, let's play a little bit more Talent Out music. And I think that's about it. Anybody have any questions? Before... Yeah, that might have been completely not informative whatsoever, but I hope you learned something. Well, I hope you learned something, and I hope that you have some questions that will push you in the direction of looking at this in an aspect that, well, were they true? Instead of scoffing it off and saying, yeah, obviously dinosaurs, yeah, obviously pleistocene mega-fauna, but dragons, you got to be kidding me, you're a quack. That stuff's got to stop. Because, I mean, obviously there's certain things going on right now that we were told by people who we were whatever in charge, geopolitically speaking, economically speaking, that there's things that are really being brought into question right now. That can be applied historically speaking as well, especially when you incorporate other cultures and their aspect and viewpoint on things. Boom, like this right here. I mean, our mountains dragons. Is it a feng shui thing, or is it a antediluvian thing? Were things bigger back in the day, as they tell us, with the largest flying extinct insect being the dragonfly? That with the short-faced bear, the huge sloth from back in the day. But no, not dragons. I think maybe I just gave an argument for the fact that might be a thing. And it tracks all the way back. Let's do it. Let's end it right now. It tracks all the way back to Western New York. Everything in New York west of the Genesee River. Effectively, that's my stomping ground. It's called the Dragon Path. Is that because of the Iroquois legend of Hino doing battle with the serpent of Niagara River? Yes, I would believe that's also a case. Or can we say that there's another underlying layer that my Erie Canal work that I'm going to be doing with Robbie? I believe the Erie Canal was here. I believe the Erie Canal was ancient in here in the Viking times, and the Vikings traveled inland on dragon ships, long ship dragon ships. So that's how we relate it back to and track it back to the Western Door, y'all, the Dragon Path in Buffalo. That's bushwhacking history in Buffalo for you, tackling dragons. Hopefully I presented my thoughts and how in a cohesive manner, and I appreciate you guys and your time and sticking around with me, because you're the reason why I do this, on top of the ambition that I have and the love that I have for history. Yeah, hey, 7-Eleven Lucas, thanks, man. I appreciate everything that you send to me. Mr. Fallout, Pearl Dragon. Yeah, that's in the song. You clutch the pearl and ride the dragon's wings. I forget the name of it. It's like an 80s joint. Jerusha McBear, I'm lit up right now from your lights. So thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. Salty Dog, what's up, man? Good to see you. You put some emojis in there that StreamYard's not recognizing. Probably some dragons. But good to see you, Salty Dog. You definitely live up to your name, man, and I think it's hilarious. I like it. Okay, so who else we got here? BD Carmen, Dragons in Scripture, Cain is a vampire. Huh, that's gravy. PT Ripa, Paolo. I appreciate all the information that you send to me too, man. Thank you very much. Iron Man Bear, interesting stream. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Chris. Really, I do. Because I don't even know what I'm doing here sometimes. I got a general sense, but if I think something's cool, I think you guys will think it's cool. So I'll show it. I have so many. Okay, so from Buffalo, this is Berserker Bear, and that was bushwhacking history, tackling dragons. I really appreciate all of your support. Hopefully, eventually I could do this more full-time and you don't have a month in between videos. But if that's the case, always know that I will come back, and make sure to come to my YouTube channel. Like, share, subscribe. And what I will also show is that the top rocker picture of my YouTube page, in between videos, I drop a lot of gravy on my IG. You can get there from my YouTube page. Check that out. Again, in between videos, you want to see what I'm doing, you know, like pouring Berserker Crete over the old world here at my house with Pops. Post stuff like that. I'm going to get back to posting stuff about truth drops in movies, cool music that I like, and whatever I'm doing, whatever I got my eye on. Check that out. Also, you have a backup for my YouTube channel on Odyssey that takes you there as well. Make sure to check that out. Sign up there, log in. That will help me to back up my stuff, whatever's going on here. Anyway, so you can reach my Instagram and my Odyssey backup from my YouTube channel. And again, please like, share, and subscribe. I appreciate all y'all. That was Bushwhacking History with Berserker Bear. Dragons. Slade? I don't know about that, but definitely some more insight provided. Okay? Keep it sleuthing, and I'll report back. Thanks again, everybody. Take care, and God bless.